Shalom to those live, to those listening to the recording on Spotify, on YouTube, or on Apple Podcasts. We are certainly happy to be with you this evening, and I want to share with you a story that I ran across today as I was preparing for something else, and I said, I haven't told this story in a long time, and I've always found a great spirit in it, and want to share it with you this evening because for a few reasons, and I'll explain in just a minute. The story is told about a great rabbi whose name was Zusia. Zusia, he was a Hasidic master and kind of spiritual teacher in his own right, and well known. And it was near the end of his life. He, in fact, was on his deathbed, surrounded by his students. And as the story goes, he was filled with fear. So his students asked him, they said, "Rabbi, why are you afraid? You're a great teacher. You're a great person. You've done so many good things in your life. Your life has been an example of piety and virtuosity. In fact, Rabbi Zusia, you have inspired so many people to become pious themselves. You have inspired so many people to become people of faith and of religion and of good deeds. That's your whole life has been dedicated. Why are you afraid?" There was silence. And Zusia answered, "When I die, I'm not afraid that I'll be asked, why were you not like Moses? Or why were you not like the great Rabbi Meir? I'm afraid they'll ask, why were you not Zusia?" Now, let me explain the story just a little bit. The message of the story, of course, is that each person has their own unique path and purpose. Rabbi Zusia wasn't ever expected to be like Moses or Rabbi Meir. He was only expected to be the very best version of himself. But just to back up for a moment, I want to share with you that the story begins with Rabbi Zusia at a moment of fear and vulnerability. And perhaps you might think that this great Rabbi Zusia, a man who had spent his whole life living in a spiritual, in an enlightened spiritual state, a man who had been a great teacher of Torah and of inspiration, he would be afraid? Yes, he was afraid. He was afraid because that is normal. That's the normal way of our living our lives. Fear is a part of life. And especially at a time of this transition of life, of course he was afraid. But he wasn't afraid that his life was going to be compared to someone else, afraid that his life could be summed up. Why was he not as great as Moses, or why was he not as great as Rabbi Meir, who had lived just a generation before him? He was afraid that perhaps he had not lived up to his own path, his own potential. And that is the message of the story. We're not supposed to live as if we are someone else. We're not supposed to live in the shadow of who else or what else there might be out there. We're supposed to live exactly in the potential of our own lives, in our own skins, in our own being. Each person has their own gifts, their own individual calling, their own way of being able to serve the world, both professionally and spiritually and emotionally. Each person has their own unique role in the world. And that's what Zusia wanted to make sure. That's why he was afraid. Had he fulfilled his own role in the world? And very often I'll hear people say things that, well, you know, in another town they do things this way, or in another place they do things this way, or gee whiz, I don't understand about if they, my neighbors have a huge sports car, why don't I have a huge sports car? We're not to compare ourselves to others. We're not to compare ourselves to what goes on in another place or what goes on for another person. We only have to compare ourselves to ourselves. And we only have to answer to be ourselves, to do and be the very best that we can be in our own lives. That's the story of Rabbi Zusia. A very famous story, and one I wanted to share with you today. One of the great sages of our tradition. May his inspiration be an inspiration for us in our own lives. A moment for mourners kaddish now. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei rabba, b'alma divra kirute v'yamlich malchute, b'chayechon v'yomechon v'chayei dechol beit Yisrael, ba'agala uv'yizman kariv v'imru amen. Yehei shmei rabba mevarach li'olam li'amei almaya, yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitboar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh, v'yidadar v'yidaleh v'yidalal shemei d'kudisha b'richu, li'ela min kol berchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechamata damiran b'alma v'imru amen. Yehei shlomo rabba min shemaya, v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom b'imramav. Yaseh shalom. Aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru. Amen. Thank you, friends, for being with me. We'll see you next week.